Welcome to our deep dive into the world of management. We're going to explore the Essential Drucker, a collection of insights from Peter Drucker spanning 6 decades of his work.
A real titan in the field.
Exactly. It's fascinating. This collection wasn't originally intended for us. It started as a 3-volume set compiled by a Japanese publisher and then later adapted into this concise edition.
They recognized his brilliance early on.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to truly appreciate someone's impact. And speaking of impact, one of the things that struck me was how Drucker emphasizes the rapid rise and influence of management. In less than 150 years, it's transformed developed countries.
Absolutely. And just like that character in Moliere's play who wasn't aware he was speaking prose, the impact of management often goes unnoticed. It's woven into the very fabric of our economies and how we interact globally.
We take it for granted. Drucker points out that during the Industrial Revolution, the initial focus was managing factories, making those assembly lines hum. But it didn't stop there.
Not at all. Those management concepts were then applied to other aspects of manufacturing. Things like decentralization, analytical accounting, even marketing as we know it today, stemming from those early efforts to manage factory floors.
It's incredible how these innovations built upon each other. Drucker mentions early American management pioneers like Thomas Watson Sr. of IBM, Robert E. Wood from Sears, and Elton Mayo.
Oh, yeah.
Individuals who, while reaping the benefits of the assembly line, also began to see its limitations.
Visionaries.
They weren't afraid to question the status quo.
Exactly. Their work led to concepts like automation, teamwork, and information-based organization ideas that are still very relevant today.
So management is clearly much more than just overseeing an assembly line. It's constantly evolving, adapting to new challenges and opportunities. And that brings us to a fascinating point. Drucker compares management and entrepreneurship to the two hands of a violinist.
He argues that you need both working in concert to create something beautiful.
That makes sense. Innovation without management can lead to chaos and wasted potential, while management without innovation can stifle growth and lead to stagnation.
Absolutely.
It's about striking a balance, recognizing that both forces are essential for success. But that balance brings up an important question Drucker raises. To whom is management accountable, and for what exactly?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He uses the example of hostile takeovers, starting in America but quickly spreading globally. This raises serious concerns about the legitimacy of management's power and who benefits from their decisions. Is it shareholders, employees, society as a whole? Drucker forces us to grapple with those complexities.
He certainly does. And speaking of grappling with complexity, let's delve into some of Drucker's key principles of management. He's a big proponent of clear communication and individual responsibility, especially in organizations where people with diverse skills are collaborating.
Absolutely. And he goes beyond advocating for better communication. He emphasizes establishing shared objectives, making sure that everyone understands and agrees on the desired outcomes. This is where management transcends mere business practices and becomes a social function.
I see how he makes that connection. He argues that we need diverse performance measures, not just to focus on the bottom line. Things like market standing, innovation, productivity, and human resource development.
It's like assessing someone's overall health. You need multiple indicators to get a complete picture. And just as we aim for healthy individuals, management should strive for healthy organizations.
What does a healthy organization look like? Drucker says the focus should always be on external results. It's not just about optimizing internal processes, it's about delivering value. Satisfied customers, students who learn, patients who are healed.
Exactly. Internal processes only generate costs. The real results are out there in the world, impacting people's lives.
Now, here's where Drucker throws a curveball. He states that nonprofits are America's largest employer. When you factor in the massive volunteer workforce, they take the crown.
And it's not just the size that's noteworthy. We're seeing a significant shift in the nature of volunteerism itself. More and more unpaid professionals are stepping into skilled and managerial roles within nonprofits. They're bringing their expertise and experience, not just their goodwill.
Interesting. Drucker provides a fascinating example of a hospital chain that proactively embraced this shift toward out-of-hospital healthcare. They established ambulatory surgery centers, rehab centers, and HMOs, recognizing that patient interest was also a business opportunity. Talk about thinking outside the box.
That example highlights a key contrast. The effectiveness of nonprofit boards. They tend to be much more hands-on, focused on the organization's work, unlike boards in large corporations, which can often be more symbolic than functional.
It's like they're rolling up their sleeves and getting things done, which connects nicely with the rise of those volunteer professionals we were talking about. They're often highly educated individuals seeking meaningful knowledge work, even in their volunteer roles.
And their expectations are changing, too. They want to use their skills, they want training and responsibility. They're not satisfied with just stuffing envelopes. They want to make a real impact.
Drucker shares an anecdote about a volunteer who felt a greater sense of purpose working with the Nature Conservancy than in their paid job. It really underscores that desire for impact. But could this be a sign of things to come for businesses?
That's what Drucker suggests. He argues that the success of nonprofits and engaging knowledge workers could be a glimpse into the future of managing talent in a knowledge-based economy. It's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it?
It certainly is. It lets you wonder if businesses might need to rethink their approach to attracting and retaining top talent. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about social responsibility. What exactly is management's responsibility for the social impact of their actions? Is it simply about avoiding bad press?
Drucker is very clear on this point. It's not about public relations. It's about proactively addressing the consequences of what organizations do, recognizing that their actions have ripple effects throughout society.
He gives a compelling example with DuPont's Industrial Toxicity Laboratory, which was initially created to deal with toxic side effects, but then evolved into a successful business providing toxicity control services.
It's a perfect illustration of how solutions to social problems can become business opportunities. He also points to Henry Ford's famous $5 a day wage. It wasn't just about alleviating worker suffering. It was a savvy business decision. It reduced turnover, increased productivity, and ultimately lowered labor costs, giving Ford a competitive advantage.
It's a brilliant example of how doing the right thing can also be good for business. Now let's dive into the realm of information and decision-making. Drucker highlights a common misunderstanding about information in organizations. Executives get excited about business models, but often fail to grasp the importance of gathering the right information in the first place. It's like trying to bake a cake without knowing what ingredients you need.
Exactly. He introduces this concept of activity-based costing, which is particularly important for service companies. It's about understanding the total cost of a system and recognizing that investing in knowledge-based work often requires more labor, not less. We often fall into the trap of thinking that automation will always lead to job cuts, but that's not always the case.
It's about understanding the full picture, right? Not just looking at one piece of the puzzle in isolation. For example, a hospital that invests in a new diagnostic tool might need to hire additional staff to operate it. The initial investment might seem like a cost-saving measure, but it could actually lead to increased labor costs in the long run.
Precisely. It's about making strategic decisions based on a comprehensive understanding of the costs and benefits involved. And that leads us to another critical insight from Drucker, the importance of understanding and leveraging individual strengths.
This is such a powerful idea. It goes against so much of what we're taught, isn't it?
Right.
We're often conditioned to focus on our weaknesses and try to improve them, but Drucker suggests that we should be capitalizing on what we're naturally good at. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You're going to be much more successful if you find the right shape for the task at hand.
He uses a great anecdote about General George Marshall, who is renowned for his ability to select the right people for the job. Marshall wasn't looking for perfect individuals. He was looking for people who excelled in specific areas, even if they had weaknesses in others. It was about finding the right fit for the assignment. It seems so simple, but it's profound.
It really is. Focus on what people do well, not on what they don't. That's a lesson I think we could all benefit from. And finally, let's talk about a topic that's near and dear to all our hearts: time management, especially for knowledge workers.
Time management. The eternal struggle. Drucker acknowledges that managing time in a role where output isn't easily quantifiable can be incredibly challenging. It's like trying to measure the weight of an idea. It's not something you can simply put on a scale.
He shares an anecdote about a senior executive who prided himself on keeping everyone informed by including them in every meeting. His intention was noble, but he eventually realized that this inclusive approach was actually wasting everyone's time, despite his good intentions.
It's a classic example of how even well-meaning actions can backfire if we don't take a step back and analyze how we're spending our time. We can get so caught up in the busyness of our days that we lose sight of what's truly important. Welcome back. Let's continue exploring Peter Drucker's insights, focusing on how to become a more effective knowledge worker.
He really dives deep into this, right? It's interesting how he compares effective people to professionals, like physicians, teachers, or even violinists.
He makes the point that these professions are all very different, but the most effective individuals share certain practices, regardless of their specific area of expertise.
So effectiveness isn't tied to a particular skill set or profession. It's more about cultivating a set of habits and approaches that can be applied across different domains.
Exactly. Effectiveness is a habit, a set of practices you can learn and hone through consistent effort. Not something you're born with, it's developed over time.
That's empowering. It
Oh.
means we can all become more effective if we put in the work. What are some of these key practices?
Well, he starts by emphasizing focusing on contribution. It's about asking yourself, what can I contribute that will make a real difference? This goes beyond simply completing tasks or meeting deadlines.
It's about understanding the bigger picture, aligning your efforts with the overall goals, and ensuring your work has a meaningful impact.
Precisely. Understanding what results are desired and then working strategically to achieve them. Another crucial practice is taking responsibility for relationships.
This seems especially important for knowledge workers. We often depend on others to utilize our work effectively.
Mm.
It's not enough to simply do your own thing in isolation. We need to collaborate, communicate, and build strong connections.
Exactly. Building strong relationships with colleagues, superiors, and even clients is essential for ensuring your contributions are recognized and put to good use. It's about working together to achieve shared goals.
And speaking of working together, Drucker also has some insightful things to say about communication. He argues that effective communication isn't just transmitting information, it's about ensuring that your message is understood and received.
He talks about considering the recipient's perspective, their expectations, and their frame of reference, stepping outside your own bubble and trying to see things from their point of view.
It's like that saying, you can't understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. To communicate effectively, you need to understand where the other person is coming from.
Absolutely. Another key practice Drucker emphasizes is knowing how you perform best. He points out that most people aren't even aware that different individuals work and learn in different ways. We tend to assume everyone operates the same way we do, which can lead to misunderstandings and frustration.
It's like we're all given different tools, but we try to use them in ways they weren't designed for. We end up struggling instead of playing to our natural strengths.
Exactly. Drucker encourages us to understand our own work style, our preferred ways of learning, communicating, and making decisions. Are you someone who thrives on routine and structure, or do you prefer flexibility and spontaneity? Do you learn best by reading, listening, or doing? Once you understand how you operate best, you can create an environment that supports your natural strengths.
That makes sense. It's about setting yourself up for success by working with your natural inclinations rather than against them. But let's face it, even if you know how you work best, there's still the challenge of time management. It's something that all knowledge workers grapple with, especially in a world filled with distractions.
Drucker is very realistic about the time management challenges we face. He points out that unlike manual work, knowledge work doesn't have easily quantifiable measures of output. It can be hard to track progress and allocate time effectively when the results of our work aren't always tangible.
Like trying to measure the value of a conversation. You know it's important, but it's hard to put a number on it.
Exactly. So what does Drucker suggest? He encourages us to start by understanding where our time is going. He recommends tracking your time for a week or two, identify those major time wasters and areas where you can improve. Like creating a budget for your time, you need to see where your resources are going before making adjustments.
It's about becoming more aware of how you're spending your most precious resource, time. And once you have that awareness, you can make conscious choices about allocating it more effectively.
He also talks about consolidating your discretionary time. Knowledge workers need large chunks of uninterrupted time to do their best work. Those little pockets of time between meetings and emails are rarely sufficient for making meaningful progress on complex tasks.
So it's about being intentional with your schedule, blocking out dedicated periods for focused work, minimizing those distractions that can derail your productivity.
Precisely. And he offers some practical advice for dealing with those inevitable interruptions. He suggests having a designated time each day for handling smaller tasks and unscheduled meetings allows you to protect the rest of your day for focused work. It's all about setting boundaries and creating an environment that supports your best work.
Those are really helpful tips. It's about taking control of your time rather than letting it control you. Now, shifting gears a bit, Drucker highlights the importance of understanding the different kinds of decisions we face. He identifies 4 main categories.
He calls them generic, unique, exceptional, and early manifestations of new generic problems. And he stresses correctly classifying each decision. Using the wrong approach will lead to ineffective results.
That makes sense. It's like a doctor diagnosing a patient. You need the right diagnosis to prescribe the right treatment. Misdiagnosing the situation will lead to the wrong solution.
Exactly. He uses the example of the Northeast power failure and the Thalidomide tragedy as early manifestations of new generic problems that required systemic solutions, not just one-off fixes. Once you've identified the type of decision, Drucker emphasizes clearly defining the boundary conditions.
By boundary conditions, he means those criteria that must be met for a decision to be successful. He has a rather striking analogy.
He compares it to the difference between half a loaf of bread and half a baby. Half a loaf is still food, it fulfills its purpose. Half a baby is not half a child, it's a tragedy. The point is, if a decision doesn't meet those boundary conditions, it's a failure no matter how clever it might seem.
That's a powerful way to think about it. Defining what success truly means, and not settling for something that falls short.
Absolutely. And another crucial aspect of decision-making, according to Drucker, is organizing disagreement. He's not advocating for endless debate, but a structured process that encourages diverse perspectives and challenges assumptions.
He believes that healthy disagreement helps us move from plausible ideas to truly right and good decisions. It forces us to think deeply, consider alternatives, and ultimately make more informed choices.
And it protects us from falling in love with our own ideas and igniting potential flaws. It's about having the humility to recognize that you don't have all the answers and being open to different perspectives.
That's a valuable lesson, especially today when we're bombarded with information and opinions. It's easy to get stuck in echo chambers and lose sight of the bigger picture. But let's circle back to communication. Drucker makes an interesting point about understanding the recipient's range of perception. He uses a classic analogy.
He talks about the blind man and the elephant. Each man feels a different part of the elephant and comes to a different conclusion. They can't communicate until they understand each other's perspectives and how their experiences shape their understanding.
It's a powerful reminder that our perceptions shape reality. We often see and hear what we expect, filtering out information that doesn't fit. So how do we communicate more effectively when we all have these filters?
Drucker suggests being mindful of our own expectations and actively seeking out diverse perspectives, recognizing that our view is just one piece of the puzzle and being willing to listen and learn from others who see things differently. He also emphasizes using clear, concise language and relatable examples to bridge those gaps. It's about meeting your audience where they are, using language they understand.
Effective communication requires empathy and stepping outside your comfort zone. But now, let's shift to leadership. It's a topic that's generated countless books and articles. What does Drucker have to say about leadership that sets him apart?
Well, he emphasizes that leadership isn't about charisma, it's about effectiveness. He points out that some of history's most charismatic leaders were responsible for immense suffering. On the flip side, many highly effective leaders were not charismatic. They didn't rely on charm, they focused on getting things done.
He gives examples like Dwight Eisenhower, George Marshall, and Harry Truman, all highly effective leaders who weren't known for dazzling personalities. So if it's not about charisma, what makes an effective leader?
Drucker says it's about setting priorities, surrounding yourself with talented people, and creating an environment where people are motivated to perform at their best. Building a strong team, delegating effectively, and empowering others to take ownership.
It's about creating a culture of trust, respect, and accountability where everyone feels valued.
Exactly. And he makes a powerful statement. The worst indictment of a leader is for the organization to collapse as soon as they leave. It's a sobering thought. Effective leaders build sustainable systems and develop capable successors.
It's about leaving a legacy, not just a temporary imprint. Building something that thrives long after you've moved on. Now let's turn to innovation. Drucker has insightful observations about how to foster innovation. It's not just about having creative geniuses tucked away in a lab somewhere.
He stresses focusing on areas where you have strengths and expertise, leveraging core competencies and applying them to new opportunities. It's not about being everything to everyone. It's about focusing on what you do best and finding innovative ways to apply those strengths.
He also cautions against diversification for the sake of diversification. New ventures are already risky. Trying to innovate in an area where you lack experience is a recipe for disaster. It's like trying to climb Mount Everest without training. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Precisely. And he emphasizes creating a culture that encourages and rewards innovation. This requires clear communication, a tolerance for failure, and a willingness to embrace new ideas. It's about creating a safe space for experimentation where people feel empowered to take risks without fear.
It's about fostering a growth mindset where mistakes are seen as opportunities for learning, not signs of weakness. But Drucker reminds us that innovation is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process. It's not something you check off your to-do list.
It's about staying curious, challenging the status quo, and seeking out new ways to improve. It's a mindset, approaching the world with wonder. And that brings us to managing oneself. Drucker recognizes that in a rapidly changing world, individuals need to take responsibility for their own development. The days of having a single job for life are gone. We need to be proactive in shaping our futures.
He points out that the traditional model of education ending in early adulthood is no longer valid. In a knowledge-based economy, continuous learning is essential. We can't rest on our laurels. We need to keep learning.
He encourages individuals to identify their strengths, understand how they learn best, and actively seek out opportunities for growth and development, both within and outside their current roles. It's about taking ownership and not waiting for someone to hand you a roadmap.
And he makes a thought-provoking statement. Managing oneself increasingly requires preparing for the second half of one's life. He recognizes that people are living and working longer, meaning we need to be thinking about how to stay engaged and productive well beyond traditional retirement age. Our careers are no longer linear. They're more like a winding path.
He suggests several options for the second half of life, including a second career, developing a parallel career, or finding ways to contribute through volunteer work or social entrepreneurship. It's about recognizing that our talents can be valuable assets in many contexts.
It's about shaping your future, not letting it happen to you. But let's zoom out and consider Drucker's thoughts on the changing nature of knowledge itself. He argues that we're moving from a mechanical universe to a biological one. What does he mean by that? Sounds abstract.
Well, in a mechanical universe, knowledge is static and objective. It's about understanding the laws of nature and applying them to create predictable outcomes. Think about Newtonian physics, cause and effect, forces, and linear relationships. But in a biological universe, knowledge is more fluid and dynamic. It's about understanding complex systems, adapting to change, and embracing uncertainty.
It's like the difference between a machine and a living organism. A machine performs a specific function in a predictable way. A living organism constantly adapts and responds to its environment. So we need to move away from that mechanistic view of knowledge and embrace a more organic, adaptable approach.
Exactly. He suggests that this shift will require a new philosophical synthesis, a way of understanding knowledge that acknowledges its evolving nature and embraces complexity. We can't just rely on old models. We need to develop new ways of thinking.
That's a tall order. How does this shift impact education and what it means to be educated? Is it no longer enough to memorize facts?
Drucker argues that the traditional liberal arts curriculum is in crisis. It no longer provides students with the tools to understand a complex world. He sees a need to move beyond memorization and focus on critical thinking, problem solving, and a love of learning. We need to equip students with the skills to thrive in a knowledge-based economy where information is constantly evolving.
So it's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about developing the ability to learn and apply knowledge in new ways. It's about fostering curiosity, flexibility, and lifelong learning.
Precisely. Now let's delve into Drucker's insights on the social transformations of the 20th century. He argues that the most significant events were the radical changes in work, workforce, society, and polity. We saw the rise of the knowledge worker, the decline of the industrial economy, and the emergence of new structures. These transformations have profoundly impacted how we live and work.
He highlights the rise and fall of the blue-collar worker, from the dominant force to a shrinking minority by the end of the century. This shift reflects the transition from an industrial economy to a knowledge-based economy, where intellectual capital is more valuable than physical labor.
And he points out that the knowledge society is far more competitive. With knowledge being universally accessible, there are no excuses for non-performance. The playing field is leveled, and those who can learn and innovate will thrive.
He also notes that the knowledge society is a society of organizations, with most people working as employees. But he challenges the traditional meaning of employee. He argues that knowledge workers, though legally employees, are also the capitalists of the knowledge society, as they increasingly own the means of production through pensions and savings.
It's a reframing of the power dynamics. Knowledge workers, in a sense, own the companies they work for. This gives them influence and autonomy that wasn't possible in the industrial era. But it also comes with a responsibility to manage themselves effectively and contribute to their organizations.
It's a new kind of social contract, one that requires individual responsibility and organizational support. But let's talk about the role of management in this new society. Drucker sees management as more than just a business function. He views it as a critical social institution.
He argues that management is the distinctive organ of all organizations, not just businesses. All organizations, whether for-profit, nonprofit, or governmental, require effective management to bring together individuals, make strengths productive, and define objectives that align with their mission.
So management isn't just about maximizing profits. It's about creating value for all stakeholders, whether they are customers, employees, communities, or society.
Exactly. And that brings us to another aspect of Drucker's thinking, the role of community in the knowledge society. He observes that traditional communities are losing their integrating power as individuals become more mobile. The rise of the internet, globalization, and remote work have weakened the ties that bound people together.
He challenges the notion of the plant community, where people's lives revolved around a single factory, as a viable model. He argues that the megastate, with its bureaucracy, has largely destroyed citizenship, leaving individuals feeling alienated. He believes that we need to find new ways to foster community in a world where people are connected online but isolated in their physical lives.
And he sees the social sector as a potential source of community. Nonprofit organizations, volunteer groups, and community initiatives can provide individuals with opportunities to connect with others, make a difference, and feel like they are part of something larger.
It's about creating spaces where people can connect and contribute, regardless of their background. But Drucker raises questions about the future of cities and universities. He suggests that they may evolve into information centers rather than physical gathering places, as technology enables us to connect remotely.
It's a fascinating glimpse into how technology might reshape our social structures in the years to come. We may see a decline in the importance of physical proximity and a rise in virtual communities. This raises questions about how we will maintain social cohesion in a decentralized world.
It's a challenge we'll need to address as we navigate the knowledge society.
Yeah.
But let's explore Drucker's ideas about the entrepreneurial society. He argues that we're entering an era that requires innovation not just in business, but in society and public service institutions. It's not enough to maintain the status quo. We need to constantly seek out better ways of doing things.
He emphasizes that innovation is not about radical upheaval, but incremental progress. It's about making small changes that impact over time. It's about constantly experimenting.
He highlights the importance of sunset laws for policies. Just as products become obsolete, so do government policies. We need to review and phase out outdated programs, freeing up resources for new initiatives.
It's about ensuring that government remains effective and responsive, rather than getting bogged down.
He also challenges individuals to embrace continuous learning in the entrepreneurial society. He argues that the traditional model of education ending in early adulthood is no longer sufficient. Individuals need to constantly update their knowledge and skills.
He sees this as a challenge and an opportunity, empowering individuals to take ownership of their own development.
It's about embracing lifelong learning as a way of life, recognizing that the knowledge we acquire today may be obsolete tomorrow. We need to be constantly learning to remain relevant in the entrepreneurial society.
He predicts that the entrepreneurial society will be competitive, with no excuses for non-performance. Success will depend on the ability to adapt and innovate. It's a world that rewards those who are agile and resourceful.
He also raises questions about the future of the welfare state, suggesting that it may need to evolve. The traditional safety nets may no longer be sufficient in a world where work is less stable.
He sees the entrepreneurial society as a potential successor to the welfare state, offering a new model based on individual initiative, innovation, and a strong social safety net.
It's a vision of a society where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, but where success is earned through hard work and creativity. Now, let's turn our attention to the role of the social sector in fostering citizenship. Drucker argues that social needs will continue to grow, both in traditional areas like helping the poor and in areas that aim at changing the community.
He believes that the social sector has a crucial role to play in addressing these needs and fostering a sense of citizenship in the post-capitalist polity, a term he uses to describe the emerging order of the knowledge society.
He highlights the importance of autonomous community organizations as centers of meaningful citizenship, providing opportunities for individuals to contribute and exercise their civic responsibility. These organizations operate outside government and business, allowing individuals to engage in their communities in more direct ways.
He contrasts this with the megastate, which he sees as having destroyed citizenship through its bureaucracy. He argues that we need to empower local communities to take ownership rather than relying on top-down approaches.
It's about fostering agency and empowerment at the grassroots level, allowing individuals to impact issues that matter to them.
He emphasizes the importance of volunteer work as a way for individuals to connect with their communities, develop new skills, and make a contribution. He sees volunteerism as vital for a healthy democracy, fostering civic engagement.
It's about creating a culture where people feel connected to their communities. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in building a better future.
Now let's talk about the need for community. Drucker observes that traditional communities are losing their power as individuals become more mobile. The internet, globalization, and remote work have weakened the ties that bound people together.
He challenges the notion of the plant community as a viable source of belonging, arguing that it was based more on fear than community. People were bound to their communities by necessity, not choice. In the knowledge society, individuals have more freedom to choose where they live, but this can lead to isolation.
He suggests that we need to find new ways to foster community in a world where people are increasingly connected online but isolated physically.
He sees the social sector as a potential source of community, providing opportunities for individuals to connect with others who share their values. These organizations can provide a sense of belonging and purpose.
He raises questions about the future of cities and universities, suggesting they may evolve into information centers rather than physical gathering places. As technology enables us to connect remotely, the need for physical proximity may decline, leading to a decentralized society. This raises challenges for maintaining social cohesion.
It's a question we'll need to address as we navigate the knowledge society.
Yeah.
But let's explore Drucker's ideas about the right size for organizations and tasks. He challenges the emphasis on bigger is better, arguing that the right size is the one that most effectively handles the information needed.
He uses the analogy of different animals, each suited to a particular niche. A bee, a hummingbird, a mouse, a deer, and an elephant all have their place, but each is adapted to a different environment.
So it's not about size for the sake of size. It's about finding the optimal structure and scale to achieve results. A small organization might be more effective in a fast-paced environment, while a larger organization might be better suited for tasks that require stability.
Exactly. And he suggests that in the information-based organization, the optimal information system will serve as the skeleton, replacing the command and control hierarchy. Information should flow freely, enabling individuals to make informed decisions.
It's a vision of a more decentralized organization where individuals are trusted to make decisions. It's a shift from a top-down model to a more collaborative approach.
He emphasizes rethinking the boundaries of management. He argues that the traditional view of management being confined to the legal boundaries of an organization is no longer adequate.
He suggests that management's scope needs to be operational, encompassing the economic chain and focusing on results across all boundaries.
It's about seeing the bigger picture and recognizing that organizations are interconnected. It's about managing relationships, not just tasks. It's about creating value for everyone, not just shareholders.
He challenges the distinction between management and entrepreneurship. He argues that any organization that wants to survive needs to embrace both. Management provides structure, while entrepreneurship provides innovation and growth.
He sees innovation as essential for any organization. It's about creating a culture where new ideas are welcomed and risks are encouraged.
He encourages organizations to create a culture that fosters innovation and empowers individuals. It's about creating a space where people feel safe to experiment and push boundaries.
He emphasizes managing for the future, anticipating change, and adapting.
He sees this as a crucial leadership responsibility, ensuring that organizations remain relevant. It's about looking beyond the immediate horizon and anticipating trends that will shape the future.
Now let's delve into Drucker's thoughts on the changing nature of knowledge and the implications for education.
He argues that we're moving from a mechanical universe to a biological one, from a worldview where knowledge is static to one where it is fluid and evolving.
He suggests this shift requires a new philosophical synthesis, a way of understanding knowledge that embraces complexity and interconnectedness.
He believes this new understanding of knowledge has implications for education, requiring a shift from memorization to critical thinking and adaptability.
He sees the traditional liberal arts curriculum as being in crisis because it no longer provides the necessary tools.
He argues that we need to rethink what it means to be educated, focusing on the skills needed to thrive in a knowledge-based economy.
He suggests that education should focus on cultivating curiosity, critical thinking, creativity, and a love of learning.
He believes that these qualities will be essential in a world where knowledge is constantly evolving. He sees this as a necessary evolution to prepare individuals for the challenges of the knowledge society. We need to move beyond traditional education and embrace lifelong learning. We've covered a lot in our deep dive into the Essential Drucker. It's amazing how relevant his insights remain.
It really is a testament to his foresight, I think.
Hmm.
His ability to see those fundamental principles that just transcend time.
He challenges us to think differently about work, organizations, and our own roles in society. Doesn't shy away from the tough questions. Makes us grapple with things like accountability, social responsibility.
Yeah, the purpose of it all.
Right. And he constantly encourages us to embrace learning, challenge assumptions, seek new perspectives. It's not about easy answers. It's about a lifelong process of exploration.
Absolutely.
So, what are some key takeaways? How can we become more effective and contribute to a better future?
I think one of the most powerful takeaways is focusing on contribution. It's not enough to just go through the motions. We need to think about how we're using our time to make a difference.
He challenges us to ask, what can I contribute that will have a real impact? It's about aligning our efforts with a purpose, whether it's within our organizations, our communities, or even society as a whole.
Yeah, and it's not just individual contribution, right? It's about creating a culture of contribution within organizations.
Right.
Empowering people, recognizing effort, fostering a sense of shared purpose.
Creating an environment where everyone feels valued and empowered.
Exactly.
Another takeaway is embracing continuous learning. The world's always changing. We can't stand still. We need to be seeking out new knowledge and skills.
Drucker encourages us to become lifelong learners, cultivate curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, staying up to date in our fields, finding mentors, stepping outside our comfort zones.
And it's not just formal education. It's about learning from experience, from our successes and failures, from the people around us.
Absolutely. Every interaction is a chance to learn and grow.
Drucker also emphasizes managing ourselves effectively, understanding our strengths, knowing how we work best, and taking steps to develop our skills and talents.
Setting priorities, managing time, creating an environment that supports our well-being, taking ownership of our careers rather than letting them happen to us.
He reminds us we're not just cogs in a machine, we're individuals with unique abilities. We have a responsibility to ourselves and the world to use those abilities.
I love that.
And finally, Drucker challenges us to think beyond our own goals. Consider the impact of our actions. Be responsible citizens, contribute to our communities, work towards a better society.
He reminds us that we're all interconnected. Our actions have ripple effects. We have a responsibility to use our talents to make the world a better place.
It's a call to action, an invitation to make a difference. It's a reminder that we all have the power to create positive change in our lives and the world around us.
Well said.
So as you continue your journey, keep Drucker's wisdom in mind. Focus on contribution. Embrace learning, manage yourself effectively, and strive to make a positive impact. And remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Essential Drucker. We hope you found it insightful. Until next time.